This couple from California, Pennsylvania, and Judy and I were having lunch with them, Judy Stedman, and at the Opera Cafe in Kentucky Street. And they said that there was a poetry walk in their town of California, Pennsylvania. And I was just thinking about downtown Petaluma, what a perfect place to have a poetry walk. And they said, well, why don't you do it? So Judy and I sat there right at the table, started making a list of venues, possible venues. And I even walked around to some of them on the way home, and then got on the phone and started calling poets.
The loveliness of poems is that they keep. The loveliness of lives is that they don't. The rising tide one-ups the tide that falls, almost. You come to me in nothing but boots and body-mind. Here, blue matches everything you wear or even think in this improvised December of cold feet, a wrinkling cold, twice iced, now tough as lust. Your soulful earrings, blue, go smoothly with the blurred blue of our clouded afternight. Up one-way streets, desire has sniffed us down and wired us to this alternating force for keeps. And yet, who knows what anguished tide will swoop tomorrow up and take us out. So quickly, even poetry, our tree root deep identity, can't ride time's wave unthrown. The mystery of love can't hide for long either. Come, melt my night. Forget today. Let tides and lives be on their drunken way. Peel off your sea and sky-dyed duds. Unstrap your blues and stay a while. But don't you touch them boots.
I think it's a great idea to bring poetry to the masses because it's almost becoming, to me, a lost art. And it seemed as exotic or esoteric. And now, when you bring it to people, you begin to recognize, when you hear other people reading poetry, you recognize truths in your own life, or it brings you to places that you might want to go to. And so I think it's wonderful to bring it to the masses.
I like the very comfortable atmosphere and very casual atmosphere of hearing the poets.
Well, I live right down the street, so it's kind of nice to have something like this. You know, especially one day where you have multiple venues, multiple artists coming together.
When in 2005, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger appointed me Poet Laureate of California, I had no idea what my responsibilities would entail. Why would you even want this job? The governor asked, igniting his cigar. The interview took place in the plush office tent he'd had set up on Sacramento's Capitol grounds where it was okay to smoke. It pays no money, and you're going to be busy. I welcomed the chance, I said, to give back to a state that has given me so much. Give something back to a state that has given me so much. And as a poet, are you political? Very political, I said. And I intend to get even more political. Why, he wanted to know. Because, Governor, these are dark times. I looked back at his 4 advisors for this appointment, all of them women, who sat behind me, facing the gubernatorial desk. You do understand that you will be expected to be present at 6 official venues during your 2-year appointment, and you must declare a major project. What is your special project? I would like to develop a website to give California's poets and students and fans of poetry access to poetry text, audio and video recordings of readings and other poetry events, as well as webcasts, lectures, and discussions. Susan Hildreth, the state librarian, loves the idea and says she looks forward to working with me. I'm going to interrupt myself and mention that Susan Hildreth is a very, very smart woman. We got together not long ago to discuss this website, and she said, I'm going to tell you my suggestion. Don't put the California state seal on the website. I said, why not? Because given its poetry, somebody's going to do something strange and shocking or ignorant, and you're going to take the heat for it. So just put it up is Al Young's website. So I'm going to take down my antiquated website and put that one up. That's going on right now as we speak. Very good, the governor said with a smile, peeping at the notes on his well-polished desk. Now, back to politics. In this poem of yours called Conjugal Visits, you say, and here Governor Schwarzenegger recited by heart, all these black men crammed up in jail, all this IQ on ice, while governments, bank presidents, the mafia don't think twice. They fly in dope and make real sure their hands stay nice and clean. That chump change Reese made on the street, what's that supposed to mean? Well, can you imagine this in that Austrian accent? More than taken aback that he had taken time to zero in on and memorize a passage of a particular poem of mine, I said, well, Governor, you surprise me. Yes, he said with a disarming grin, you would not think I would like a poem like this, where you're saying such things about the government. But I like it, I do. You know why? From a lifetime of watching the ways in which poetry, music, and all the other arts continue to leap the tallest walls and ease across the tightest of borders, I sat prepared for yet another surprise. First of all, the governor said, I follow hip-hop. He said that. Secondly, I too am for prison reform. Energized by the tension the advisors behind me transmitted, I said, you write a poem, you express something, but you never really know how a reader or listener will take it. As a fellow artist, Mr. Young, I know this well. In Terminator, there's a scene where I go into an LA police precinct and mow down several people, blam, 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 just like that. Well, my fans in the hip-hop community tell me, oh, Arnold, that is such a cool scene. But my fans in the LAPD community, they like it too. So you go figure. I left the tent certain the governor would surely select one of the other four contenders, someone safe, if any poet or any poem is ever truly safe. But days later, while on a train up to Washington State to give a jazz and poetry fundraiser reading for the Seattle Review, I got a call from National Public Radio. Responding to a press release I hadn't yet seen, they wanted to break the news of the appointment by having me read my poem, To Be the Perfect Fool, and it goes on and on and on.
When I think of poetry, I think of an abstract way to look at the world realistically.
I get to replenish myself with other people's creative work.
I find it very introspective and therapeutic.
When people read their poems, it basically makes one feel less isolated.
Well, what I like is that I'm bringing poetry out to people, and it's not in a book on a shelf. And sometimes we get people in the venues that just happen to be there. They didn't plan to come to the poetry walk, and they'll hear the poetry, and then they'll come up and tell me that they didn't realize that poetry was like that they thought it was that flowery rhyming, from school. And they kind of shut it out of their lives. So I like the idea of that, it's wonderful. All these people come, all these poets come and read. I think it's important.
The Envoy. One day in that room, a small rat. 2 days later, a snake, who, seeing me enter, whipped the long stripe of his body under the bed, then curled like a docile house pet. I don't know how either came or left. Later, the flashlight found nothing. For a year I watched as something, terror, happiness, grief, entered and then left my body, not knowing how it came in, not knowing how it went out. It hung where words could not reach it. It slept where light could not go. Its scent was neither snake nor rat, neither sensualist nor ascetic. There are openings in our lives of which we know nothing. Through them, the belled herds travel at will, long-legged and thirsty, covered with foreign dust. Dog and Bear. The air this morning, blowing between fog and drizzle, is like a white dog in the snow who scents a white bear in the snow who is not there. Deeper than seeing, Deeper than hearing, they stand and glare, one at the other. So many listen, lost in every weather. The mind has mountains, Hopkins wrote, against his sadness. The dog held the bear at bay that day. Vilnius. For a long time, I keep the guidebooks out on the table. In the morning, drinking coffee, I see the spines. St. Petersburg, Vilnius, Vienna. Choices pondered, but not finally taken. Behind them, sometimes behind thick fog, the mountain. If you lived higher up on the mountain, I find myself thinking, what you would see is more of everything else, but not the mountain. The heat of autumn. The heat of autumn is different from the heat of summer. One ripens apples, the other turns them to cider. One is a dock you walk out on, the other the spine of a thin swimming horse, and the river each day a full measure colder. A man with cancer leaves his wife for his lover. Before he goes, she straightens his belts in the closet, rearranges the socks and sweaters inside the dresser by color. That's autumn heat. Her hand placing silver buckles with silver, gold buckles with gold, setting each on the hook it belongs on in a closet soon to be empty, and calling it pleasure. After Degas. The woman who will soon take a lover shaves her legs in the bath, considering. Would knowing or not knowing she does this please him more? Character and life. The young novelist held underwater the head of the character in his book he loved best. In the book, and as he wrote, he counted until he was sure it was finished. Maple. The lake scarlets the same instant as the maple. Let others try to say this is not passion. Lemon. The grated lemon rind bitter sleeps in, a wanted flavor, like the moment in love, when one lover knows the other could do anything now wanted, yet does not. Global warming. When his ship first came to Australia, Cook wrote, the natives continued fishing without looking up, unable, it seems, to fear what was too large to be comprehended. Why Bodhidharma went to Motel 6. Where is your home? The interviewer asked him. Here. No, the interviewer said, thinking it a problem of translation. When you are where you actually live. Now it was his turn to think. Perhaps the translation?
Something wonderful about writing a poem, if you can make it work. And if you can read a wonderful poem, there's nothing better.
I feel that poetry is the language of the soul, and I think it's really important. And you know, whether it's somebody really famous or someone who's just writing from their heart and spilling their guts out, it's really important. I mean, people that write poetry are listening to their soul.
The Elvis I knew well was spiritual. The Elvis I knew well was spiritual. The books he'd read on mystics, yoga, Jung, and Jesus, Buddha, long before your digital technology kicked in and Mao Zedong became an icon, you could click. He tried to buy enlightenment. He thought a check might do the trick. Big bucks, love tendered, wide and blank. No deal. No Ouija board, no deck of tarot cards could trump his fate. His star beamed underneath or far beyond the God he knew as blackness, gospel, blues. As far as light years went, Elvis could ride and nod. He couldn't get high on glory, glamour, fame. Blissless, he drugged you with his moves, his name. Oh, you're very kind, thank you. Tribute. Yes, brothers, you invented jazz, and now I'm inventing myself, as lean and prone to deviance as the brilliance of your musical utterance, a wind that sweeps again and again through my American window. What a life you sent me running out into, expecting everyone to know at once just what it was I was talking or not talking about. The genius of our race has far from run its course, and if the rhythms and melody I lay down this long street to paradise aren't concrete enough, it can only be because lately I've grown used to taking a cozier route than that of my contemporary ancestors. Where you once walked or ran or railroaded your way through, I now fly, caressing the sturdy air with balls of my feet, flapping my arms and zeroing.
This is a little short poem about Elvis Presley. Elvis loved his mother, gyrated, curled his lips, dyed his hair, got hooked, got fat, was always Elvis. The Avon lady called regularly at Graceland. I love that. I love the idea of that. This is called In Tune. I wanted to make things better, become different, substitute one thing for another, alter time, make a move, go to a different place, start over, allow change, shift gears, get out of neutral, cross the stream, make waves, convert, commute, mutate. Just because I talked to Dorianne and she gave me the words she gave her students because she is a teacher of words. And I am unable to write a poem because of death by rust, unable to jot down words, overheard conversations and descriptions of people moving through their lives, colorful umbrellas and men working on the deck outside the apple box. Me sitting inside the window, having a toasted tuna and a glass of red. Unable to put it together because of dying inside, and it's sink or swim. I'm listening to Jimi Hendrix because he feels no pain, because there's no stopping him. Jimi Hendrix makes me want to have sex. I am unable to write it because of death, and all the words in the world aren't going to help me. I need a piano to play off the words, to play off my sorrow, one word at a time. This is called the Potamondius tree. Can everyone hear me? The Potamondius tree. My sister talks about a wild plum tree that filled her yard in San Rafael with open laciness and graceful beauty. Like this, she cups her hands as if to hold a great bouquet. She tells about the white cloaked ground, the dark sweet fruit, the never-ending dropping down. It keeps me busy with the mess. You couldn't eat or give enough away. I raked and hauled until my back would ache and stiffen up. Some people might complain and cut it down, like the neighbors next to me, chopping all their trees because of leaves, not me. I didn't mind, I loved that tree.
Everybody's been so amazing. It's like a total embarrassment of riches. it's the sort of thing that makes me really proud of Petaluma.
Poetry is a part of our natural legacy as human beings. It starts at a time when we didn't have media and we didn't have books and all of that. We just had the human body and the human voice and things to say to each other. But I'm talking about poetry in its vast sense, not in the sense that we settle for it in modern times, which is what I was talking about at the reading at Copperfields, that we think poetry is about us. It's about me personally, and that's what it's a medium for. But poetry can express history, it can be very practical, it can express scientific principles, it can be used to exorcise demons, to transform the reality around you. And you know, going back to a time when our ancestors really believed that words of truth were energy, were power agents. We don't tend to invest that kind of importance to language anymore. Poetry is very close to music in that it's physical. A musical score is not music. I mean, no matter how beautifully calligraphed it is or notated it is, until someone sings it or plays it or sounds it out, it doesn't really exist, or it only nominally exists. And the same is for poetry. People think that the text is the poem, and we live in a time when text is everything. But when you bring language to life, it's physical, it's vibratory, it reverberates, it resonates, and because we are vibration, basically, frequencies, that language reaches us, we respond to it in ways that's altogether unpredictable, beyond just what the words appear to be saying.
What is so important about the Petaluma Poetry Walk for people who've never been? What would be important? Why should they come?
Well, they could come out of curiosity. They could come just to see what's going on. I mean, they could, if they didn't like, they walked into one of the venues and they didn't really like the poetry or the people, they could go wait at the next venue for the next, because sometime during that day they'll hit some poet that they like, or something will happen that they enjoy, you know. So I can't predict who's going to like what, you know, but I know that they'll enjoy some of that day. You know. Some people plan it, that they know the poets, and they might plan to just come to one reading. They might say, well, we'll go have dinner, or we'll go have, you know, we'll go have lunch, and we'll go see this person or whatever. But I notice that there's some people they have it planned like that. Maybe they're just going to shop at Petaluma that day. And then when the venue comes up that they like, they're going to go to that venue. The people that stay through the whole day, it's pretty nice that they do, because we know what it's like. You do it, and it's a long day. Of course, we're doing work, but people love it. They love the poetry walk, and all through the walk they keep coming up and thanking me. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing this. So, and people come up that get caught, like they get caught in the bookstore or something, they're in there, and they start listening to the poetry, and they'll come over to me and they'll say, I didn't know poetry could be like this, you know, and they really like it. And some of them can't wait to rush out the door. They're running out the door as soon as they can. They're afraid poetry's going to get stuck on them or something.
Jerry DiGiorno is wonderful. She's one of a kind. She came to poetry late. She's a working class woman from San Francisco who speaks the truth about her life and about everything she sees around her. She's not pretentious. She loves poetry, and it's because of her that we have the Petaluma Poetry Walk, which was her concept and which she has doggedly developed over a period of 14 years.
Well, I'd like to thank all the venues and all the poets that came to read, and all the people that come to hear the poems and the poetry, and all the support that we've got. We've got a lot of support. We've changed venues a lot of times, which is kind of fun in a way. We have to find a new venue, and that's okay. But I think it's been great, and all the volunteers that come and help me, like you helped me. So I'd like to thank everybody. And come to the Poetry Walk. You won't be sorry.
Fine young woman who was It's just the two of us tonight. Down the road.
I believe in myself, light rain, sudden storms, the moon, polenta and sausage, good sex, red sunsets, a perfect martini, the stars, true love, Monet's garden, cracked crab, long baths, soft jazz, a walk on the beach and root beer floats. I believe in quiet mornings, the ocean, slow dancing, the back of a man's neck, Fred Astaire tapping across the screen, the magic of the Sacramento Delta, stone angels in Italian cemeteries, growing your own tomatoes, Paul Newman's eyes, that writing poetry is telling the truth, doing crafts is in my blood, ironing is therapy, kissing is an art, and dusting is a waste of time.
Hi, I'm Becky Winslow. Welcome to my show. You just heard the poem I Believe by Jerry DiGiorno, who is my special guest today. Jerry, welcome to the show.
It's nice to be here, Becky.
I'm so glad you're here. I've always loved your poetry.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad that you're the poet laureate.
That's nice.
Now, how do you become? What is a poet laureate?
Well, a poet laureate is, well, from what I know about it, is that I'm supposed to actually try to bring poetry out to the, to the people, and support poetry, uplift poetry, do anything I can to bring poetry out more into the community.
And do you go and speak to a lot of places?
Yeah, people will ask me all the time to appear, to speak, to be part of a program.
To do shows like this?
Yes.
On radio?
Radio, TV, everything, so it's a lot of fun.
Very good. Well, I want to read you something. It's from the American Heritage Dictionary.
Okay.
And it defines a poet laureate as a poet held to be the most excellent in a region. Webster's defines it as a poet honored for achievement in his or her art, or one regarded by a region as its most eminent or representative poet.
That's me.
That's you. That's absolutely you. You know, I've always thought you were the most excellent. I mean, the first time I heard you read poetry, I went, there's the person I like.
Oh,
I mean, I love the way you read it. And I mean, it's like, now who selects you when you become the poet?
There's a committee. I used to be on the committee, when they first started.
Is it of past poet laureates?
Well, there are 3 past poet laureates.
Do they vote?
Yes, they're on the committee.
They're on the committee.
They're on the committee, and I will now be back on the committee. I took myself off when my name was put up.
Oh.
And so now I will automatically be part of that committee to pick the next, in 2 years from now.
How many people are on it?
It varies. There might be 7 to 10, something like that.
And
usually, you know what it is? It's a person from each town in Sonoma County.
Oh.
So it's from each community. There's a person.
So when you were inaugurated up in Santa Rosa, a lot of the people there were people who actually voted for you?
Yes, and people, the other poet laureates spoke.
So yes, that was wonderful. Yeah. That was wonderful. Now, about what age were you when you started to write poetry?
I was probably around 21 years old. I was living in Daly City, and I had my 3 kids. And I started taking them up to the library up on Mission Street, and taking out, for some reason, poetry books. Longfellow, rhyming poetry.
Rhyming,
So that's what I started writing, and it's like on and off through the years I've been writing poetry.
Oh, can you remember what your first poem was?
Well, I can remember my first
Or
poem,
one of
which you
them?
really wouldn't want to hear. Which is
Yeah.
like, I'd like to die, I'd like to cry.
Oh no,
Something
so
like that.
it rhymed
And
like.
so, you know, but I mean, it's a very long poem
Yeah.
about dying and crying.
Well,
But this
I like
poem,
the father. I like that one. And you said that was one of your first
it
kind
is.
of original
It's one
ones.
of my early poems when my father died. So I
Okay,
wrote this poem.
would you read that for us?
Sure. It's called Father. Father, why did you go away? Was life so cold and lonely? You can't have grown old so fast. You were still young when I looked last. You grew old before our eyes in those very last days. When did you change from youth to age?
That's lovely.
Oh, thank
Now,
you.
your first poem, you actually rhymed things.
Yes, a lot of rhyming.
And what prompted you to write poetry as opposed to short stories or novels or?
I don't think I had any idea of writing a novel or a short story.
You like poems best?
Because I was reading a lot of poetry from the library, it seemed like that was, and I didn't have to worry about spelling so much or punctuation. So, yeah.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
good because kids need to really know that they don't have to do that because most of
That's
your
right.
poetry you don't rhyme.
No.
You don't capitalize.
Yeah.
You don't punctuate.
No, I don't.
And I love that though because everybody can interpret it different.
There could be some rhyming. There's some rhyming in some of my poems.
Right, some of it.
It's hidden.
Right.
But it's not purposely. But end rhyming's harder. I think
Yes.
It's more sing-songy. Yeah.
Right. Now your book, Marilyn and Me, that was a really interesting book. I really loved it. And would you read that Marilyn and Me poem?
Yes, I will.
I love that.
Thank you. I like that poem.
Yeah,
myself.
yeah.
And this poem I wrote about living in Daly City.
Uh-huh.
Marilyn and Me. My husband thought she was sexy. I was 21 with 3 kids. At home, he dressed me in tight skirts, sweaters, and high heels, posed me on the wooden bench in our kitchen, my legs stretched out in front of me, one knee higher than the other, my head resting against ivy wallpaper. He took photographs, carried copies in his wallet. I dreamed of Marilyn, her sad, sweet face moving across the screen. In the movie The Misfits, Marilyn, playing Rosalind Tabor, tells Clark Gable, maybe all there is the next thing that happens.
That's so good. Now, when you were writing that, did you write it when you were 21?
No.
How long later did you?
I probably wrote it maybe 20 or more years after
Really?
that.
So you thought back to that time, or
Yeah, all of the thoughts about my life were coming to me, and I felt like I needed to write about them.
So did you have photographs? Because I know that the picture on this is of you where he actually posed you.
That's the photograph that my husband actually took and carried in his wallet, and when we broke up and got divorced, he gave me,
he
handed
gave
me
it
back
to
this crumpled up photograph from his wallet, and so I actually have the original photograph.
Oh, dear me. So you something triggers your emotions to make you think of something to write, and then do the words come first or the emotion? I mean, do you ever just think in words? I mean, or
that can happen, and that's you can find a poem too. You can see something written, or you can hear someone say something that just is a poem. It's a found poem. But with these kind of poems, they're all inside all of these things that you've lived through,
Right.
and emotions, and
Right.
so when you might start writing about the tree outside your house, and you don't know what you'll end up writing about something personal probably. You know, you don't try to go there.
Right.
So you start writing about anything, and you'll probably end up writing about something personal.
So when kids are writing poetry, what do you advise them? How would you start them to write?
I think that with kids, I think you could say, write about the color red, or write about a toy you have, or something personal. But the best thing to do would be to just have them write just write about anything.
And they don't have to spell.
No, they don't have to spell. They don't have to do punctuation. They don't have to have special line breaks or, you know, they can just. Most of us probably should just write.
Right.
And then we can look at it later, and you know, if we want to edit it.
Right. Now that's your personal style. I mean, I feel
Yeah.
like now I remember I read E.E. Cummings, and he wrote in the little,
Yeah.
you know, lowercase.
Yeah.
And your poetry, although it isn't like his, it kind of reminds me of what he was trying to do.
Yeah.
And it really, I think emotions get released when you're writing poetry, don't you think?
I
mean,
think
it's
so.
like when you're doing it, do you go back and really actually feel kind of like you did when that was happening?
Yes, and it's sometimes very difficult to
Yeah.
even read some of my poems. You know, it's very emotional. So yeah, you go right back there.
Yeah. Now, I remember when you were telling this story about this next poem that I want you to read about heels. I love this poem, and I love the idea of it. And would you read that?
Yes,
It's called Heels, and it's wonderful. Okay.
Yes, and I wrote this poem when I was in the Napa Writers Conference, and I was in St. Helena. So this was a thrift store in St. Helena.
Oh, a thrift store.
Called Heels. At Lenora's vintage resale shop, I come across a young boy of 10 or 11 trying on high heels. I tell him try on the tan slingbacks, and he does, his mother yelling from the next room where she's looking at the dresses with his little sister. Stop trying on those high heels, Franklin. We stand there together, picking through the shelves of not quite worn-out pairs. His mom sticks her head in the door and tells him he's tried on enough for now. I just wonder how they feel, how you can walk in them, he says, pulling on black T-straps with French heels, the kind that make you wobble. He gets up and teeters toward the mirror. Look at these, aren't they cool? The reflection of his mother right behind him.
I can see that. It paints such a vivid picture of kids. Now, I that's one of the things I'm really interested in is children.
Yeah.
And I am going to get back to my series, Ways to Do Better in School. And I was thinking how much fun it would be to do a show with poetry and children.
It would be, yeah.
Would you like to help me with that?
I'd love to. Yeah.
I mean, maybe we could get the kids to write in.
Yeah.
And send their poetry, and we could bring them into the studio or here, and we could go over it. I know that you work at the Phoenix with kids. Tell us something about that.
That's a mentoring for teenagers, and Dave Murphy started that.
And who is Dave Murphy?
He does after school mentoring there at the Phoenix. So he asked for more mentors, you know. So a bunch of us went there, and it's been very, very wonderful. Very nice.
About how many kids come?
It varies because some of the nights that we do it's the second and fourth Thursday of the month, and what's been happening is the schools have been having events on the same time at the same night. So we have less kids, less and less. So we're thinking about maybe it's not going to keep going, which is too bad.
Maybe a weekend thing or something.
I know. Well, Dave will have to figure that out.
Yeah, because that's great. That's really
but
great.
We're looking for a place for young people to read. We're looking for venues for young people to read poetry.
Now, they used to do it at Copperfield's Cafe, which isn't there anymore, because my son went to St. Vincent's, and there was a whole group that did the poetry reading, and they'd do one whole night. They put a book together. It was wonderful.
It is wonderful.
I mean, it should be an ongoing thing.
That's what we need. We need to find someone that might want to let us come in. And
that would be great. We'll have to find maybe a coffee company or something.
Yeah.
Would do that. Now, I know that you also created the Poetry Walk.
I did, yes.
Yes. Would you like to tell us something about that?
It's going on 11 years now.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, and it was some friends of mine. I was having lunch with them, and they were telling me they were from California, Pennsylvania.
Oh,
and they were telling me about this poetry walk in Pennsylvania, and we were sitting downtown, you know, in one of the restaurants, and I said, you know, Petaluma, this town would be the perfect. The old downtown?
Yes.
The perfect town to have a poetry walk. And they said, well, you know, why don't you do it?
And you did
Just like Mickey Rooney.
You did it.
So that very day I went around and checked out to see if I could get some venues.
Uh-huh.
And then I went home and started, you know, calling up people I knew that knew a lot of poets, you know, like Dorian Locks and Diane DePrima.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a lot of poets to read.
And the next one is going to be September 17th.
That's right.
2006.
Yep.
Could you read one of the poems that you've read during the poetry walk?
Sure.
Okay.
This is called Leaving a Trail. Excuse me. Clouds billow above the mountains. 3 or 4 spirals of gray connect them to earth. Everything is still. The hills so close I could touch them. Cows stand like statues, like toy statues on the muted green, spreading across the flatness. Black tree trunks line the road, their bare branches reaching up. I am on my way to say goodbye again, leave a love note, but it is too sad, too silly. I turn my car around and head north. A fuzzy-haired woman in a prime Datsun Z is throwing bits of paper out the window, pieces of her life that glitter and zigzag to the ground, leaving a trail.
That's good. Now, there's so many different ways to interpret poetry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I love the way you read poetry, but when I go to some poetry readings, they read it in that sing-songy voice.
Yes.
Why do they do that?
I think that there are some poets, even some famous poets,
yeah.
that I've fallen in love with on the page,
Uh-huh.
and I've gone to their reading, and they really don't really care to really learn how to read their poems.
No.
It's not important to them for some reason. I think it's very important.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what I was going to ask you was, since we're talking about different interpretations, would it be okay if I read this poem?
I'd love to. I'd love to hear other people
Okay,
read my
because it
poems.
gives the audience, it gives everybody a different way.
Different take.
A different take.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is me reading your poem.
Good.
Clouds billow above the mountains. 3 or 4 spirals of gray connect them to earth. Everything is still. The hills so close I could touch them. Cows stand like toy statues on the muted green, spreading across the flatness. Black tree trunks line the road, their bare branches reaching upward. I am on my way to say goodbye again. Leave a love note, but it is too sad, too silly. I turn my car around and head north. A fuzzy-haired woman in a primed Datsun Z is throwing bits of paper out the window, pieces of her life that glitter and zigzag to the ground, leaving a trail.
It was wonderful.
Is that fun?
Yeah.
It's fun having different interpretations.
I like to hear it. I like to
Yeah.
hear other people read my poems.
Yeah, I like to read your poems, and I like to hear you read your poems. Now, let's see, next page. Your new book is called White Lipstick, and this is a really nice book, really great poems. It's got a nice cover. How did this come about?
The cover is a photograph of me when maybe I was 14 or something. I don't know how old I was. Mission High School in San Francisco in the background was in Dolores Park. I don't know. I think probably my first husband took the photograph.
It looks like a Marilyn Monroe.
I know.
It looks very much
People
like a
say.
Marilyn Monroe.
Well, my oldest daughter Yvonne, she takes photographs, but she also puts photographs on her computer and fools with them, and that's what she did to that photograph. And
It's
people
lovely.
said, you know, that might be good on your book. So
Yeah.
I sent a copy of it to Red Hand Press, and they loved it.
It's great. Would you read a poem from this one? And this one is Love.
Another love poem.
Another love. Plays a big part.
Love. I was in it, up to my ears. I could hear music playing in the background. It wasn't love, really, just me wanting to be somebody. I fell into it like a broken branch, carried down a rushing stream to the open sea.
Very good. A lot of your poems have to do with love, not necessarily romantic love, but love between you and your family, your sisters, your mother,
That's
your
true.
father. And do you think that that's sort of the essence of your poetry?
It probably
is your love.
It's essence of a lot of poetry.
Right, you know, but yours is special. I don't know. I've read a lot of poems, and I don't feel the same way a lot of them when they're talking about it. Yours has something to me that just, I don't know. It's just real.
It is real. Most of it is
real.
Most of it's real and true. Although some of my sisters and my family say that's not.
Please don't write about me.
True. Yeah, well, they do that too. They don't say it anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, they used to worry about what I was going to write about. But I think we all have different memories about things. And only thing I can do is write my these are my memories,
Right.
you know.
And everybody has different ones, even if it's exactly the same thing.
Yep.
The two people watching will have a completely different interpretation.
That's true.
And like if someone were to write a short story about one of the things that you wrote about, it would be different, but it would be the same thing.
Yeah.
Poetry is just, I don't know, condensed short stories.
Well, people say that with my poetry is a lot of visual images that they see. You can see, there's a lot of emotion.
Yeah. I know that people ask you to write poems, and I know they ask you to write about Petaluma, and I'd like you to read that. And that one is also from White Lipstick. So
yes, it is.
So how did that come about?
Well, this poem, the city asked me to write this poem about Petaluma.
Oh, wow.
It was very difficult to do because it's difficult to write a poem about when someone asks you to write about a certain thing. So I started driving around Petaluma and making notes about things I like about Petaluma. So that's why I call it, people ask me how I like living in Petaluma, which I love. I love Petaluma. So this is it. People ask me how I like living in Petaluma. Store owners dress up for Halloween. You can have a conversation with tellers at the bank. Brides register their gift wishes at Tomasini Hardware. The ragged palm trees in Hill Park blow in the afternoon breeze. The river and the railroad wind their way through town. Hell's Angels, suited businessmen and women dancing down the street with briefcases, chicken floats, highlights of the Butter and Eggs Day parade. Trees shade buckling sidewalks in front of old Victorians. A&W car hops on roller skates deliver cherry cokes and shy smiles. The exiled angel guards Petaluma, her silver wings spread out over the city. The D Street drawbridge lifts its weight to let boats pass. You can put your ear to the rail and hear its mournful cry. You can see Donna all day, every day, pushing her shopping cart all over town. Marked Subaru's sculptures reach up towards the sky, connecting us to other worlds. The red sun disappears behind the silhouette of hills, the sky turning pink and peach and pale yellow. Country is just a little way out of town.
So great. It also dates Petaluma, doesn't it?
Yeah, because a lot of these things are no more.
Right. Donna doesn't, I haven't seen Donna in a couple years. And the railroad doesn't come through town, and A&W doesn't have the car hops anymore.
That's right.
It's missing. So you really do love, though, because you never answered it in the poem. You love.
I love Petaluma, and Donna got a place to live.
Oh, good, good, because I remember seeing her.
She's wonderful.
Yeah, one of my main goals here in Petaluma is to help children do better in school. That was my series that I'm trying to put together. And how about school for you? Were you a good student?
No.
No.
I was a poor student.
Oh. What do you wish you had done differently when you were in school?
Well, I mean, I wished I would have been able to enjoy school. When I was very young, I think I was in the 1st or 2nd grade, they shaved my head at school.
They shaved your head?
Yeah, so I was very embarrassed to go to school.
No.
So I would try to not go to school. You know,
Why did they do that?
Because I had lice.
Oh.
And the principal and then this woman, I think she was a nurse, decided to shave my head.
Oh
at
my
school.
goodness. And you had like 7 sisters?
There were 9 of us.
9 sisters.
Yeah.
So
9 counting me. But anyway, the thing is that I didn't have a good experience when I started.
Yeah.
And I wasn't a good student. In high school I got F's and D's. And I did well in art and gym. Those were my best classes.
You made up for it, though.
Art classes and, yeah, well, sure.
I mean, because you do all those things now.
I've taken a lot of college classes since
Right,
then.
and so I know that you also give classes and workshops. Tell us about the message on your machine that's always talking about the Diane DePrima workshops.
Diane DePrima, she comes to my house every August and does a 2-day workshop.
And explain who she is.
Diane DePrima is a famous beat poet. And
Beat?
Yeah, beat. She's wonderful, and she has a new memoir. My Life as a Woman. It's a wonderful book to read. But we do a 3-day cabin up in Occidental in March. So.
All right, in the heated cabin.
Heated cabin.
I like when you put that on your answering machine, as opposed to shivering writing poetry.
And sometimes Dorian Locks and Joe Millar come, and sometimes they'll do something.
And they're famous poets also.
They live up in Eugene, Oregon.
Now tell us, one of the poems that you've written in one of the workshops. How about reading one of those?
Okay. This is a poem called Just Because, and it's actually Dorian Locks, who I just spoke about, who lives in Eugene, Oregon. She used to live here in Petaluma, and we used to take her workshops. It was wonderful. So once in a while I'm talking to her on the phone, I say, Dorian, give me an assignment. So she had just given her college class this list of words, to write a poem. So she gave them to me.
Just a list of words?
A list of words, yeah.
It had no connection?
I don't remember if she said anything else about it, but
right.
Usually you give a list of words and you might say use this or say this or do so many lines.
Mm-hmm.
You might add more instruction to it.
Right. But they're just unconnected words, and you have to try and make something out of them.
And so this is the poem. It's called Just Because. Just because I talked to Dorian, and she gave me the words she gave her students, because she is a teacher of words, and I am unable to write a poem because of death by rust, unable to jot down words, overheard conversations and descriptions of people moving through their lives, colorful umbrellas and men working on the deck outside at the apple box. Me sitting inside the window having a toasted tuna and a glass of red, unable to put it together because of dying inside, and it's sink or swim. I'm listening to Jimi Hendrix because he feels no pain, because there's no stopping him. Jimi Hendrix makes me want to have sex. I am unable to write because of death, and all the words in the world aren't going to help me. I need a piano to play off my sorrow, one word at a time.
And I remember when that was Judy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Judy was a really good friend, and that was really hard. And how, because you were in such sorrow, how did you actually begin that?
This poem?
Yeah, were you really at the apple box and you just...
Oh, yeah. Because Dorian gave me this assignment, so I had it, in my little book I carried around with me.
And so you just...
I was just sitting down. I like to go sit out in places like that and write. It's good for me to do that.
And the water is there.
The water, you could sit in a bar. I mean, if you sit in a place that has people, you might start writing about the people too, or listening to what they're saying,
Yeah. Well, your poetry really creates all the visions that you want to get across. I know that whatever you're feeling, whenever I read it or hear it, those are what I feel. The emotions that are in them just feed my soul.
Well,
now, you just gave me a new book.
Yep.
This is an old book, but it was new to me. And it's called I'm Tap Dancing. And I love this first poem in it, and I want you to read it loud and clear. It is wonderful.
It's called I'm Tap Dancing.
It's called I'm Tap
Dancing.
Dancing.
My book.
After your book.
So, I'm tap dancing. I'm tap dancing across the stage. Echoes of sound follow me, filling the room. I tap off stage. I am a hit. Soon I will be famous. Write my life story. I can see myself sitting at little tables in small bookstores all over the world, signing books, tapping my foot.
And all of that has come true. All of it. Every single bit of that. You are tapping. It's wonderful. You are tapping, Jerry. You are doing absolutely wonderfully. I'm so happy to have you as my friend. Oh. I'm so glad that you're the poet laureate.
It goes 2 ways. Baby.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing your poetry with us. Mm-hmm. You read it so beautifully. And I want to thank everybody that has helped with the show, and everybody that's listening or watching, everybody has talent. And I'm hoping that this new generation that's coming along will believe in themselves and do good things. This is Becky Winslow. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.
I believe in myself, light rain, sudden storms, the moon, flint and sausage, good sex, red sunsets, a perfect martini, the stars, true love, Monet's garden, cracked crab, long baths, soft jazz, a walk on the beach, clear floats. I believe in quiet mornings, the ocean, slow dancing, the back of a man's neck, Fred Astaire tapping across the screen, the magic of the Sacramento Delta, stone angels in Italian cemeteries, growing your own tomatoes, Paul Newman's eyes, that writing poetry is telling the truth, doing crafts is in my blood, Arning is therapy, kissing is an art, and dusting is a waste of time.